Jung-tae's breath caught in his throat when he stumbled upon Sora's lifeless body. Strange people are everywhere, and sometimes they're closer than you think. Jung-tae seems like a normal real estate agent, but he has a dark secret. He's a stalker. Though he looks decent on the outside, Jung-tae has a habit of sneaking into homeowners' houses when they trust him. He never steals or breaks anything. In fact, he often fixes broken items just to satisfy his urge to spy. He always takes something small and unimportant from the house as a keepsake, storing them in a secret room he built just for this purpose. The thrill of knowing someone's private life gave him a feeling of power. One day, Jung-tae set his sights on a new target, a beautiful woman. The more beautiful the woman, the more he wanted to watch her. When he saw the woman sharing high-end food on social media, especially when she was eating sausages, his desire to spy grew even stronger. Jung-tae decided to take action. He quickly found out where she lived and discovered her name from the mailbox downstairs. She was a popular internet celebrity, and by following her online, Jung-tae learned all about her personality and habits. Taking action was better than just thinking about it. Jung-tae immediately began following her. Soon, he knew exactly where she lived and even had her name, Sora. Jung-tae became obsessed, knowing her every move, every habit, and every preference, all while staying in the shadows. She volunteered often, loved brand-name bags, and enjoyed various delicacies. On top of that, she had adopted many stray animals, which only added to her appeal. This flawless persona had won her a large number of fans, and it fueled Jung-tae's desire to spy on her even more. Determined to know everything about her, Jung-tae began to observe Sora closely, trying to figure out the patterns of her life. He wanted to know exactly when she left her apartment, so he could make his move. After a period of careful observation, he finally figured out the times when Sora would go out. When she left again, Jung-tae decided it was time to try and crack the door lock to her apartment. However, there were too many possible combinations, and he couldn't manage to crack the code right away. To make matters worse, the other residents of the building were frequently coming and going, making it impossible for Jung-tae to kneel in front of Sora's door for too long without drawing attention. But Jung-tae was quick thinking. After noticing fingerprint smudges on the keypad, he immediately came up with a new plan. He waited patiently through the night, and when Sora was gone again, Jung-tae returned to her door. This time, he removed the protective film from the combination lock, thinking that he could finally uncover Sora's secrets. The anticipation made his heart race with excitement, and he could barely contain himself as he hurried home to prepare. Once home, Jung-tae took out the phosphor, ready to make the fingerprints on the commonly used keys visible. But when he turned on the purple light and shone it on the film, his excitement quickly turned to disappointment. The film was covered with random fingerprints, not just a few he thought would be commonly used. He stared at it in dismay, realizing how difficult it would be to proceed. Although discouraged, Jung-tae refused to give up. Every time he encountered a setback, he returned to his usual methods. A group of hard-working couples became really excited. But Jung-tae didn't expect that the next day, things would take a huge turn for the better. The person who had been haunting him actually came to find him. This sudden surprise left Jung-tae a bit confused, but he quickly adjusted. After talking for a while, Jung-tae found out why Sora was there. It turned out that Sora was planning to leave the city and wanted to sell her house. Hearing this, Jung-tae was thrilled. If he couldn't get into the house before, this chance was now being handed to him on a silver platter. To make things easier for Jung-tae, who needed to show the house to buyers, Sora generously gave him the room key. The moment Jung-tae got the key, he couldn't help but think about Sora's personal life. Looking at the messy dining table and the empty wine bottles scattered around, Jung-tae felt the urge to shout out to Sora's fans. "Is this what your star looks like in real life?" When Jung-tae entered Sora's bedroom, he noticed a lot of used-up cosmetic bottles, things that Sora clearly didn't need anymore. Jung-tae took a picture and kept one of the empty bottles as a souvenir. He also checked if anything in Sora's house was broken and noticed a leaking voltage regulator. Jung-tae regretted not bringing a new one with him. To be more useful, he decided to help Sora by clearing the sewers, knowing that hair was often the biggest problem in women's sewers. After finishing these tasks, Jung-tae went home and watched Sora's makeup tutorials online, feeling a strange pleasure from knowing Sora's secrets. This feeling of knowing something nobody else knew made it hard for him to stop. One day, Jung-tae bought a new voltage regulator and returned to Sora's house. But when he went in, he was almost scared to death by what he saw. Sora was collapsed on the sofa, covered in blood, looking like she had been dead for a long time. The shock made Jung-tae panic, and he instinctively reached for his phone to call the police. But just as he dialed the number, he stopped, realizing that in his current state, he might not be able to explain everything clearly to the police. Feeling lost, Jung-tae decided to flee, but later, he knew he should call the police. So, Mrs. Jung contacted a young couple who were interested in buying the house. Jung-tae planned to show the house to the couple in the middle of the night, thinking that this way, he could make them the first witnesses and avoid suspicion himself. Jung-tae felt strange and confused. He clearly saw Sora's body, so why was it gone? The only explanation was that the murderer had cleaned up the scene. When he went in, the murderer might have been hiding in the room and could have seen him. The next few days were full of nervousness. He didn't get any calls from the police or threats from the murderer. Just when he thought everything was fine, a red envelope shattered his false sense of peace. Extreme fear quickly took over, and his body couldn't help but react. At that moment, a phone call interrupted his thoughts. When he got ready to restore the last photo of the Queen Mother, a runaway car suddenly rushed toward him. All kinds of strange events made him feel like the murderer was out to get him. Being an internet celebrity isn't easy. He wanted to call the police, but he also needed to update fans first. The internet celebrity who used to compete with Sora every day finally decided to call the police a week after she disappeared. After the police investigated, they quickly figured out who the last person was that Sora had contacted before disappearing. When the police came to Jung-tae's door, he tried too hard to stay calm, giving what he thought were perfect answers to their questions. After he handed over Sora's room key to the police, he felt a little relieved. But to keep up with what was happening, he quietly hid on the roof across from Sora's house, watching Officer Wu and his partner busy inside. He was nervous, but when he saw a lot of police officers arriving, he knew they had found something. He realized that sooner or later, they would find out about him, so he had to do something. As an internet celebrity, he knew she had a lot of enemies. He checked Sora's videos again and started carefully reading the comments. He paid special attention to those who insulted Sora, especially someone named Liai, who was the worst. Under every video of Sora, she posted angry comments. The two of them didn't get along. Jung-tae decided Liai was my first suspect and pretended to be a fan to get closer to him. After successfully fooling Liai, Jung-tae broke into his house, hoping to find some clues. At Liai's house, he found the red envelope that had terrified him before. This made him sure that Liai was one of the murderers. Could pull all this off. As the investigation continued, a man named Lee Jong-jo caught Jung-tae's attention. He was a big fan of Sora, with a level of obsession that was almost scary. With this new suspect in mind, he started thinking about how to continue the investigation, but the killer might not give him the chance. The moment he stepped into the house, he sensed that something was amiss. With years of experience in breaking into other people's homes, he instinctively reached for a baseball bat from the shoe closet, bracing himself for any sudden attackers. Just as he was about to switch on the lights, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. No one responded when he checked outside, but he could hear the distinct sound of someone pressing the password buttons. The door lock had already been tampered with. Opening the door cautiously, he found no one there, just a red envelope lying on the ground. Suddenly, he was attacked, caught off guard by the assailants. However, his survival instincts kicked in and he fought back desperately. The two mysterious attackers didn't seem very skilled, and in the midst of the struggle, he managed to rip off one of their helmets, revealing the face of Lee Jong-jo, the very person he had suspected. Taking advantage of the momentary confusion, he pushed the door open and bolted out. Now, all his suspicions were confirmed, and he knew it was time to clear. He soon found an armed police officer, ready to disclose everything he had uncovered. But the officer questioned why he would contact the police if he had indeed killed Sora. Despite his attempts to explain, the officer remained unconvinced. As he pushed open the door, the officer drew his gun, prepared to handle any threats. When he turned on the power, something fell off. Ants began crawling out from a nearby nest. And as he nervously moved towards the living room, he discovered his treasure had been destroyed. Yet, there was no time for grief. Nearby, the sight of Jung-tae, one of the murderers, hanging from a beam in his own house shocked him to the core, causing him to collapse to the ground in fear. But the nightmare wasn't over. In the ruined nest, he noticed a familiar red envelope. As he reached for it, the armed officer intervened. Taking the envelope, he could only watch helplessly as the officer read it, hoping it didn't contain anything that could further incriminate him. When the officer read the envelope, his attitude toward Jung-tae changed instantly. It had a photo of Jung-tae with Jung-tae and a note framing Jung for murder. The situation was getting worse by the minute. Even though there was no reason to doubt the AI before, Jung was sent back by the officer, now suspected of something much bigger. Now, he was being investigated as a suspect, and the thought of being labeled a murderer filled him with a deep sense of hopelessness. When the officer moved to arrest him, his instincts took over, leading him to resist. Something within him screamed that if he were taken back to the station, he might never see the outside world again. Running away seemed like his only option. After managing to escape, he returned to the company and found an unoccupied house, its owner currently out of the country. This place would serve as his temporary hideout. Despite being a wanted man, he refused to give up. He remained determined to find a way to clear his name. His search led him to Lee Jung-jae's house, where he stumbled upon a note bearing his mother's name. As he stared at it, memories flashed through his mind, like the unsettling detail of his mother's ashes jar being disturbed. Realizing the implications, he couldn't suppress his emotions any longer. Regardless of the time, he made his way straight to the funeral home. The journey to prove his innocence felt like it would be a long one, and he couldn't help but wonder what other cruel acts the murderer lurking in the shadows might commit. In his desperation, he smashed into the Queen Mother's house, seized the jar inside, and fled. The funeral home staff pursued him relentlessly. His frantic behavior was driven by the belief that the murderer might have hidden something within the Queen Mother's jar. Once he reached a secluded spot, he opened the jar, tears streaming down his face. Amidst his sorrow, he continued searching and soon found a handful of tape wrapped around a blood-stained knife. Though his heart ached, he forced himself to keep looking. Before long, he discovered a familiar red envelope. Upon opening it, he read the chilling message. "Your secret room is interesting." The murderer clearly knew him well, even being aware of his chamber of secrets. After taking a moment to calm down, he sorted through the jar's contents and immediately rushed to Lee AI's house. At that moment, Lee AI was live streaming, completely unaware that the perverted ant he had been speaking about him had arrived at his door. When Lee AI opened the door, they staged a break-in and kidnapping in front of the live stream audience. Confronting Lee AI with fierce determination, he saw the panic in Lee AI's eyes. In a desperate bid to protect herself, Lee AI quickly mentioned that she was live streaming and begged him not to go too far. But at this point, being a wanted criminal, he cared little about the consequences. Fueled by anger, he smashed Lee AI's setup. Despite his intense questioning, Lee AI refused to confess to any wrongdoing. Seeing that Lee AI still wouldn't admit anything, he decided not to hold back. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Lee AI immediately cowered. She began to explain that the reason he had called the police was that his god of wealth, Sora, had lost contact with her. The two of them had engaged in various private interactions online, all of which were scripted. Lee AI had crafted an angelic persona for Sora, making her appear saintly to garner sympathy from internet users. In return, Sora would give her 20% of the relief money she received. The red envelopes in the AI's possession were the ones Sora had used to deliver money. After listening to the AI's explanation, something suddenly clicked in his mind. The distinct scent of cosmetics he had noticed at Sora's house that day was identical to the fragrance of the mysterious man who had broken into his own home. Could it be that Sora had orchestrated everything? Meanwhile, Sora's sister, Dora, arrived at the police station after receiving a call from the authorities. Having known Sora intimately for 5 years, she was well aware of how her ruthless pursuit of an ideal life had led to a deep family estrangement. Sora had betrayed their brother without hesitation, and afterward, she had resorted to increasingly questionable means, associating with perverted older men. Sora's character grew more twisted. Determined to stand out, Sora began with a complete transformation, using technology to alter her appearance. An accidental post opened a new path for her, making Sora realize that online fans were much easier to deceive than people in real life. Thus, Sora crafted the perfect angelic persona and meticulously built her character. Sora borrowed bags from well-known figures and fabricated a sympathetic backstory, portraying herself as someone who rescued stray animals. When the first fan sent her money, Sora saw a lucrative business opportunity. She amassed a significant following by capitalizing on the mean things the AI said about her. To grow her audience further, Sora contacted the AI privately, and together they pretended to be rivals in front of their fans. However, Sora had a darker plan in mind. She had noticed that Jung-tae was following him. Although simple tracking didn't bother him, Sora had too many secrets to protect. If these secrets were exposed, all her carefully constructed plans would collapse, and some of those secrets were deadly. To safeguard them, Sora decided that silencing Jung-tae was the only solution. Thus, she began plotting against Jung-tae. Sora willingly went to Jung-tae's door, handing him the house key and later finding a devoted fan to get drunk. Using her charm, Sora made this fan so loyal that he would do anything for her, even die. When everything was in place, Sora stabbed herself in the belly and boiled a large pot of blood to stage a murder scene. Of course, only 5 milliliters of the blood were actually hers. After rehearsing how to convincingly act as a dead body, Sora waited for Jung-tae to show up. As a professional stalker, Jung-tae couldn't resist the opportunity, and just as expected, he was frightened and fled. With just a photo, Sora could frame Jung-tae for murder. Sora even perfected her appearance and, with the help of his loyal fan, orchestrated a series of bizarre events to ensnare Jung-tae. From the trashing of his mother's house by Lee Jong-jo to the near-fatal car accident, everything was meticulously planned by Sora's fan. However, the fan proved ineffective. Failing twice to attack Jung-tae, Sora then charmed another victim, convincing them that they had bought a haunted house. Now, everything about Jung-tae's case had become clear, yet he hadn't been formally accused. Sora's next move was to ensure that Jung-tae would take the fall while she escaped from her dead state. Sora, a truly cunning woman, knew Jung-tae's situation and wasn't afraid to confront him. In fact, during their first meeting, Sora had portrayed herself as a victim, gaining his trust. While Jung-tae was momentarily distracted, Sora began calling the police from outside the door. Caught off guard, Jung-tae realized he was about to be trapped and couldn't see a way to clear his name. Facing armed police, Jung-tae felt utterly helpless. Meanwhile, Sora became the one the police were protecting. As he saw the smug look on Sora's face, Jung-tae knew his options were running out. But then, a bold idea struck him. He realized that the only person who could save him now was the armed police officer. So, Jung-tae contacted the officer, arranging a confession. To prove his sincerity, he offered to help bring down the bloodthirsty witch Sora. Confident that Jung-tae knew all her secrets, including the murder of her little sister, Sora agreed to meet. In her mind, killing Jung-tae would allow her to continue being the perfect angel in the eyes of her fans. What Sora didn't know was that Jung-tae had already contacted the armed police officer, and their entire conversation was being recorded by hidden cameras. Sensing that her time was up, Sora prepared to kill Jung-tae as soon as they met. But just as she was about to strike, the armed police officer and his team swooped in, capturing Sora. In the end, Sora was arrested for murder, while Jung-tae didn't escape imprisonment either. However, since he hadn't actually harmed anyone, the law showed him some leniency. During the investigation into Sora, the police discovered the body of her little sister in the woods, along with dozens of buried kittens, revealing the full extent of her twisted deeds.